In this video, you will learn how to effectively design your course using backward design. Please see the video description for a link to a Google Doc worksheet. I invite you to make a copy of this worksheet to help guide your design process. You may also find it helpful to open a Canvas course you are currently teaching or designing to follow along during this workshop. Backward design is a process for planning your course where you begin with the course objectives and design backward. There are a few reasons why this can be a really useful framework for designing a course. First, designing using backward design is a very intentional process because you're starting with what you want your students to be able to do or know at the end of the course. Second, you can communicate more clearly with students from the beginning of the course about the purpose for each activity, as well as the class as a whole. Backward design encourages you to be a more transparent instructor, which can benefit how well students engage in the course and retain course content. Because the focus of your course development is on the outcomes of your instruction, you can choose the most effective teaching and learning strategies. And lastly, a course using backward design can help you stay on track and stay more organized as an instructor. If ever you are unsure of what to include in your instructional materials, you're able to go back to your main goals and objectives and choose the most effective ways to achieve those goals. In this video, I've broken down the process of backward design into 6 steps. I will explain each one and offer examples from an undergraduate English composition course. Step 1, summarize your goals beginning from general to specific. You might start by reflecting on your purpose for teaching this course, and what are the larger scale ideas and concepts that students should know from taking the course. After you've reflected on your goals, I recommend writing a one-sentence course mission statement. A course mission statement is similar to a thesis statement for an essay or a mission statement for a business. It should summarize your goal for the course and use very clear language to state what students will be able to do or know at the end of the course. The purpose of this one-sentence mission statement is to solidify the most important takeaway for your course. I've included an example here from our undergraduate English composition course. At the end of the course, students will have a clear understanding of what constitutes effective writing and how to engage in the writing process themselves. Step 2, write objectives. Using your mission statement, you will write both course level and module level objectives. The course level objectives are goals for the entire course, and your module level objectives should build towards the course level objectives. Please be aware that many of you may have objectives that are created by your department and therefore you cannot change them. If this is the case, I suggest reviewing the objectives and reflecting on what they mean. If you have the ability to write your course objectives, or if you've already written some that you want to revise, here are some things to keep in mind. Use your more general mission statement to write your more specific course objectives. A well-designed course should include both course level objectives and module level objectives. Course level objectives are the goals for the entire course. Effective objectives lay out measurable actions for your students. Examples of words that are not measurable include learn, know, and understand. I've included a table on this slide to help you think about some measurable verbs using Bloom's taxonomy. For example, if you want students to understand something, then choose, describe, discuss, or explain to begin your objective. The example objectives that I've given here are: students will be able to demonstrate active reading strategies. They will be able to analyze written words for their structure and rhetorical effectiveness. They'll be able to demonstrate an effective process for inventing, drafting, revising, and editing written work. And they will be able to write clear essays that are in accordance with academic writing conventions. These are objectives that are easily measured because we will be able to point to specific assignments where students have analyzed rhetorical concepts and demonstrated effective reading and writing. Step 3, determine acceptable evidence. With your objectives in mind, consider what constitutes student success. In other words, ask yourself how you will know that your students have met your objectives. After you've written your objectives, it's time to begin considering what constitutes evidence that your objectives have been met. In other words, what does course mastery look like? As an example, I've broken down what I would consider effective evidence for each course objective. For demonstrate active learning strategies, students are able to ask questions about the text, students are able to make connections between the text and their own experiences, students are able to summarize text in their own words, whether that's in spoken word or written word, and students are able to articulate the main argument of the text, either in class or in a session, speaking or writing. For the second objective, analyze written works for their structure and rhetorical effectiveness. Students will be able to outline a text focusing on the main points. Students will be able to write about or talk about the rhetorical effectiveness of the text using rhetorical concepts. And students will be able to define rhetorical terms in their own words, not just repeat or memorize them. For Objective 3, demonstrate an effective writing process. Students are able to submit written work to show that they have brainstormed their ideas. They will be able to submit essays in draft format and then later submit essays that have improved in their writing. And for Objective 4, write clear essays in accordance with academic writing conventions. Students will submit papers that follow MLA guidelines and essays that have clear logic and clear language. Step 4, create your course content in the form of instructional materials and activities. In order to plan your content, you might reflect on how best to convey the necessary information and how to help students build skills in your subject area. Course content is both instructional materials and instructional activities. Instructional materials are how you'll deliver course content, whereas learning activities are the hands-on tasks you ask students to complete. As you think about creating instructional materials, consider the best methods of instruction to accomplish your objectives. For example, if your objective is for students to be able to write essays, instructional materials should focus on the writing process. Your instructional materials should also build knowledge sequentially. Consider the order of your instructional content. For example, if you want to give students information about the writing process, you might start with brainstorming and then move on to outlining and then give them information about writing a thesis statement and later about developing full paragraphs. Example instructional materials include written, video, or in-person lectures. Panopto is a useful tool for getting video lectures, and Teaching and Learning with Technology has 2 Getting Started with Panopto videos on our YouTube channel. Instructional materials can also include readings, articles, charts, graphs, and other files. I recommend posting your course materials into pages, whether they're text, video, links, or images. To create your instructional activities, you can use Canvas assignments, quizzes, and discussions. We have several activity resources available through TWTLT that you can access through Canvas Commons. These activity resources include templates for a journal assignment, a blog assignment using discussions, a wiki assignment using editable pages, and a podcast assignment. To access these templates, open your Canvas dashboard. From Global Navigation, click Commons. In the search bar, type in TWTLT. You will see our mini TLT resources, including the 4 templates. Click which one you'd like to use. From the right, click Import Download. Select the course you'd like to bring this into, and select Import into Course. After you've created your instructional materials and activities, you can organize them into a series of modules. Using modules can help you be intentional about the order in which students are accessing course content, creating a progressive flow for your course. Our Canvas at TW example course includes a helpful course layout using modules. The link to this public course is included in the description box below. Each module in this example course includes a page with course objectives, a page with assigned readings, an assignment, a discussion, and a quiz. Step 5, assess student success. Assessment means determining whether the learning objectives have been met or not. Since objectives and assessment are clearly stated throughout the course, objectives and assessments work together. Keep in mind that evidence is not necessarily grades. It may be helpful to consider whether someone not familiar with the course would be able to say whether a student was successful based on the work they've submitted. You should state your course objectives throughout the course, which will help students understand the way you have assessed their mastery. Step 6, reflect and revise. Reflecting on what can be improved is essential to the process of backward design. And since you want to continue to plan and implement your goals strategically, you may wish to reflect on your instruction throughout your course. Backward design is a cyclical rather than a linear process. Some example reflection questions include, what worked in this course? Did the majority of students meet these learning objectives? How do you know? What could be improved? Your instructional materials, your activities, your organization, or something else. Backward design works well for designing a course from scratch, but you can also use it to revise a course you've already designed. If you are using backward design and you already have a lot of course materials, I've included some tips for revising a current course. I suggest first reviewing and possibly revising your course objectives. Next, break your materials down into smaller sections. If you have a lot of longer lectures, you could break that information down into 10-minute videos, for example. You can also turn any longer texts into checklists or bulleted lists so that they can be more easily digested. Finally, only keep materials that are relevant to your course objectives. If you have extra materials that you are reluctant to get rid of, you could move them to an appendix or a list of recommended readings. Contact your instructional design partner at Teaching and Learning with Technology for any additional help. Thank you for watching.